Hello, I am Kharel, Research Director at South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, a think tank based in Kathmandu, Nepal. I am presenting a paper that I have co-authored with Kshitiz Dahal and Jorge Davalos. And this paper has been supported by the Partnership for Economic Policy. We look at the impact of international remittances on non-farm self-employment, generating evidence from Nepal. Let me first present briefly the context and motivation behind this paper. Nepal is highly dependent on remittances. International remittances account for a quarter of Nepal's GDP. There is empirical evidence that such inflows of remittances have contributed to poverty reduction. However, there are concerns over implications of these remittance inflows for sustainable economic transformation. There is an abiding interest in popular discourse and policy discussions in Nepal over, for example, questions such as, are remittances being used for productive purposes, where productive purposes mean the use of remittances in areas beyond consumption. There is also policy emphasis on utilizing remittances for production activities. However, global evidence is mixed on the impact of inflow of international remittances on non-farm economic activities and, by extension, non-farm self-employment. So we ask two basic questions. What is the impact of remittances from international migration on the labor supply of left-behind household members, including for non-farm self-employment? And what is the impact on the performance of the non-farm enterprises that these household members operate? The country in focus is Nepal. Now the methodology. To look at the impact on labor supply, where the dependent variable is hours worked, given the truncated nature of this variable, we employ a type 1 two-bit model using cross-sectional data. However, since our main variable of interest, remittances, are endogenous, we instrument it. And our main instrument is village-level migration rate with a 10-year lag. This has been extensively used in the literature. We also employ alternative instruments to which the results are robust. One alternative instrument is district-level migration rate with a 20-year lag. The other is the same district-level migration rate with 20-year lag interacted with average remittances. We use standard controls such as at the individual level, household level, and village level. Secondly, to assess the impact of remittances on gross enterprise revenue, we again use cross-sectional data and we instrument remittances again as before. However, we now use a type 2 two-bit model, the Heckman type model. So this approach takes into account two issues in the estimation strategy: selection into operating enterprises by households, as well as endogeneity of remittances. The data that we use are cross-sectional data drawn from a nationally representative household survey, the Nepal Living Standards Survey, third wave, which was administered by the Central Bureau of Statistics of Nepal in the fiscal year 2010-11. It includes a non-farm enterprise module that we exploit, and this is a major contribution of this paper in the context of Nepal. The sample that we use comprise 14,191 individuals aged 15 to 64 years, drawn from 5,667 households from 381 villages spread across about 500 primary sampling units. About 55% in the sample are women. A quarter of households in the sample receive remittances from absentees abroad. A third of households have a non-farm enterprise. The average hours worked per week in non-farm or non-agricultural self-employment are about 8.76 when we include both 0 hours worked as well as positive hours worked. When we only look at positive hours worked, the average hours worked per week in non-agricultural self-employment are 23.3 hours. Average remittances per household are about Nepalese rupees 32,643 when taking into account zero remittances also. But when we only look at receiving households, that is households that receive remittances, the average remittances per household are 141,323. Now the data for the instrumental variables that I discussed earlier are drawn from the National Population Census 2001, which gives us a lagged instrument, as well as the same census conducted in 1991, which gives us the 20-year lag instrument. We also use the National or Nepal Living Standards Survey, the first wave, 1995, as an additional source of instrument. Now the research results. Let's look at the effect on labor supply. We find that higher remittances lead women to reduce labor supply to non-farm self-employment, to wage employment, as well as to agriculture self-employment. In particular, we find that doubling remittances leads to 3.6 fewer hours worked on average in non-farm self-employment per week by women. Now we also find that hours spent on household work increase slightly when remittance inflow increases. However, this is not big enough so that there is an overall reduction in total hours worked. However, the effect on men is not consistently significant. Now let's look at the effect of remittances on enterprise revenue. This figure basically plots the distribution of the marginal effects of log of remittances on gross revenue. And we find that on average, a 10% increase in remittances leads to a 0.5% decline in gross revenue on average for those who operate non-farm enterprises. And while it is not shown here, we have also found that the distribution of these statistics associated with these marginal effects indicate a significant effect. Now, what are the policy implications of these results? First, these results indicate that the reservation wage channel dominates over other channels when remittance inflows increases. For example, the dominance of reservation wage channel looks stronger than the possible easing of credit constraints associated with remittances. The other implication is that non-farm self-employment is likely a vocation of reluctant entrepreneurs, to use a terminology used by Banerjee and Dahal. Now these people who are working or operating their own enterprises are likely doing so out of desperation, and the moment they have an alternative, for example, the moment they receive remittances which increase their reservation wage, they are likely to stop working in non-farm self-employment activities or to reduce their labor supply to such activities. Apparently, government policies to utilize remittances for production purposes are not working effectively. There is a need to revisit those policies and fine-tune them through a gender lens, since we find that the effect of remittances or negative effect of remittances on non-farm self-employment are basically driven by the effect through women. There is a need to create conditions that make non-farm self-employment a vocation of enthusiastic entrepreneurs rather than that of reluctant entrepreneurs. Thank you.